Hello everyone, this is Jonathan Little. I'm here today with episode 166 of Weekly Poker Hand. I hope everyone's having a great week. Here we're going to find a way to play King-2 offsuit with a very short stack. We're playing 800, 1600, and I'm starting with 23,000 in the big blind, so only about 15 big blinds. Everyone folds to the player on the button, a tight aggressive player with a lot of chips. He min raises. Now, with the stack size, you can really justify calling with a pretty wide range of hands, knowing that you're really only putting a lot of money in the pot after the flop if you get something decent, like a pair or a draw. The problem with King-2 offsuit is that it doesn't really flop very many draws, and half the pairs it flops, the twos, are going to be pretty weak. So if there is a hand to fold, this is it. Also, really just any big card and little card is always pretty tough to play, but I've been experimenting with defending versus the min raises a little bit more often, and also we are against a button raise, and King-2 probably isn't even that bad against a button raising range. So I'm okay calling in this spot. And kind of the neat thing is, if you know your opponent's just going to blast you every time, you can just call only to make top pair. And when you make top pair, you just get paid, right? Because then you're putting in one big blind to try to win your whole 15 big blind stack. And clearly, if we're getting 15-1 implied odds, that's great. Alternatively, if our opponent's going to play really fit or fold, or really straightforwardly, then top pair's top pair is often good, but we don't even need top pair then. Sometimes king high is going to be good if our opponent just checks down. So if our opponent is too aggressive, we can defend this spot easily. And if our opponent's too passive, we can also defend it easily. So the only time it's really a dicey defend is when our opponent's going to play really well. And yeah, most people just don't play really well. And even if they play really well, we still are going to make a decent hand some portion of the time. So flop comes king 7-3, 2 diamonds. I have the king of diamonds, giving us top pair. We check, and our opponent bets 3,500 into the 9,000 pot. So in this spot, on this somewhat dry board, and it is pretty dry. I understand the 7 and 3 are suited, but notice we have the diamond, so even if a diamond comes, we'll have a second nut flush draw. This is a spot where I think we could certainly call, but I also think we can shove. I think either play is fine, depending on what we expect our opponent to do. If you think your opponent's going to bet the flop one time and then just never put another chip in the pot unless he makes a strong hand, then sure, just go ahead and check shove immediately. Understand you're going to get called every time you're beat, but you're also protecting your equity to some extent. If we instead had something like Jack-2 and the board was Jack 7-3, I would much prefer check shoving. But because we have a king for top pair, we're really only concerned about an ace coming on the turn, and that's just not going to happen very often. So I can see calling or shoving here being fine, depending on how aggressive I expect my opponent to be on the turn. So I do call, which kind of implies that I'm going to expect my opponent to bluff sometimes. Turns is 6 of hearts. I check and he shoves. So this is what I want. Our opponent's betting pot. That's how much we have behind. I'm trying to think if there's like any real world where we could possibly fold this hand. And I just don't think so. I think our hand's too good. You're usually not trying to play post-flop with King-2 offsuit. And you're usually not trying to just put all your money in with top pair, no kicker. But when you start with 15 big blinds and you defend your big blind with a wide range versus what hopefully is a wide range from your opponent, you're just not folding here. So we're going to look him up. I do call, and he has Queen 7 for middle pair. Wow. I do not like the way my opponent played his hand at all here. In this spot, I think he definitely should have raised pre-flop, but this is a pretty nice check back spot. If he is going to bet the flop, he should definitely check back the turn to try to induce bluffs. When he shoves the turn, what am I going to call him with? I'm going to call him with all the good draws, which at this point should have a decent amount of equity. I'm going to call him with all the kings, which clearly he's screwed against. And I'm going to call him with the 7s, which I guess he's ahead. So, now that I just laid out the range, I guess it's not that bad of a bet, especially if he thinks I'm going to check shove with all of my kings on the flop, which a lot of players do. So if I'm check shoving all of my kings on the flop and I don't have like pocket ace because I would have shoved that pre-flop, then my opponent has almost the nuts. So maybe that makes logical sense to value bet. If he had a hand like 8-7, I would really dislike the bet, but at least here he can get called by stuff like 8-7. So it's probably not the worst bet in the world, but at the same time, if I have all the kings in my range, as I clearly do here, or at least the majority of kings in my range, I'm not a big fan of the shove. Also, it's certainly worth mentioning, if I had a flush draw on the flop, I would almost certainly shove. So my opponent's not really protecting against those anymore. So I don't know. I could definitely see betting or checking being fine. The problem with the queen 7 on king 7 3 6 is that there are a lot of bad turns for our opponent. Like if I'm floating the flop with queen jack of clubs or jack 10 of clubs or something like that, not queen jack clearly because he has a queen, but if I do have one of those random club hands, then our opponent doesn't mind if we fold. That said, if you know your opponent has 6 outs, just check behind and let him bluff. Because if I have 9-8 of clubs or something like that, I'm going to be bluffing on a lot of rivers because I have 9 high, right? So cool spot. It's always fun to get to play for all your money with king 2 offsuit. One thing you'll see a lot of amateur players do in the spot that is a big mistake is they will call the preflop raise with king 2, check call on king 7 3, and then check fold to the all in on the turn, thinking, well, if he's willing to put me all in, he must have me beat. But that's not true at all. So don't fold once you make top pair. And, defending somewhat wide is okay, especially if your opponents are just going to put their stack in a lot of the time. So that's going to be it for this episode of Weekly Poker Hand. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have not already, check out my interactive poker quiz site, pokercoaching.com. There we have a lot of quizzes. If you like Weekly Poker Hand, which presumably you do if you're here at episode 166, you will thoroughly enjoy pokercoaching.com. So check it out. Let me know what you think. You can actually get a completely free 1-week trial. You can go submit your answer to the monthly homework question. You can check out the webinars, the past ones and the current ones I do each month for the members. So you may like it. Thanks a lot. Good luck in your games, and I will talk to you next week.